Today I'm finally getting round to my technical Q&A. Let's see what questions you ask.
Hey Andy, it's Josh Wright from Wrightfix Media. Love your stuff, huge fan. Question for your Q&A. What camera setup do you use? It looks so good. You do so many great angles. You have to have more than one camera. So I'd love to know your setup. So keep up the great work, and yeah, huge fan.
Thanks Josh. Well, as part of my work I use a lot of different cameras. Let me run you through the ones that I own. Starting off, the DVX200. I use this for high quality 4K event work. Next I have the Panasonic PX270. Again, I use this for event, conference and TV work. Moving down in size, I have the GH5 with a selection of lenses. But I think the one you're really interested in, Josh, is the one I use for most of my vlogging and YouTube videos, which is the Panasonic Lumix G80 or G85. This is a beast. It is a great little camera. It's smaller and lighter than the GH5, so which means it's much easier to carry around on holidays or traveling, or just throw in my backpack. Used with the Rode Video Micro for sound. I can use this for vlogging, but I tend to use that more with the little Olympus 9mm pancake lens. Very wide lens with fixed focus, which means I can do pieces to camera without having to use the autofocus system. And last but definitely not least, the little LX15 from Panasonic, 4K pocket camera, which is great for taking out to bars or out in the evening, slipping it in my pocket without having to take the G80 or the GH5, and you can get some really nice shots off of this thing under the right circumstances. You also, I think, were asking about multiple cameras and how I get some of the shots. Well, a lot of that is camera trickery. It's just ways I shoot stuff, shooting reverse angles, making it look like there are multiple cameras rather than actually being multiple cameras. Ask me about that and I'll do a whole piece on how I cut some of that stuff together. Hope that answers your question.
So our question is, when you're traveling, what is your favorite and much needed vlogging accessory?
So must-have accessories for vlogging. Well, first of all, you need a good hat. If I was going to choose, I've got several accessories that I really do like for vlogging. This Video Micro from Rode, which costs just around £40, is a really good investment if your camera's got a microphone socket on it to give you good quality sound out and about and when the wind is blowing. The performance of it compared to some of the more expensive mics is just amazing, so absolute must, one of those. Another accessory that I really like is made by Amran, the M9, and it's a little camera top light which you charge up. It's very small, very high quality of light. I have talked about these before and done vlogs on showing you these before. If I turn it on, it's incredibly bright little lamp. Comes with clip-on filters, so you can change the color temperature if you're working indoors. Just snap them in underneath that. And again, same sort of price as the Rode Video Micro, about £40. So again, I keep several of those in my kit so that I can use one, and if it goes flat in about an hour and a half of use, then I can just put it on charge and pull out another one. I do have various little bits of grip, bits and pieces that I use, but tiny little tabletop tripod is often good for just sticking on a wall or a table somewhere, just to point back and give us a shot. And I know one that you guys liked that you saw already, which is my little 9mm Olympus lens. This is a real bonus for vlogging. because it means I can hold the camera out and still get a very wide shot. And this is with the 9mm lens, so you can see just how wide that is. The new thing I've got for this time is a variable ND filter, which I bought for this trip from Tiffen. It costs £100, but it allows me to adjust my exposure in the bright sunlight out here in Spain and control the exposure much better to get a much nicer image out of it. You get to see that on this vlog. That's probably my top accessories.
Hey Andy, I was curious, considering your background in broadcast television, I was wondering if there was one or two things that you wish that the online video world, or YouTube, would borrow from broadcast television that would just make it a little bit better.
Oh, that's a tough one, Jacob. Been thinking long and hard about this all morning. Yeah, it's really interesting because everything I think about that from the broadcast world is being done or as well or better online. You know, a lot of the TV work I was doing was in standard definition or high definition, shooting everything in 4K. You might think that with a big production crew you could do a really slick production, but there are people out there doing that, and that's the nice thing with YouTube is, you know, somebody can pick up their mobile phone, make a movie all by themselves. At the other end of the scale, you've got people doing full-scale productions of stuff to incredibly high quality. So I think the one thing that's come to mind that I would say is better in the broadcast world is going to be sound, and largely around loudness, perceived loudness, where we have these new measurements based on LUFS of perceived loudness across an entire show, and that really goes out the window on YouTube. But even there, I've got to say that YouTube seems to be getting much better at dealing with those discrepancies. But too often you click on a video, one time it's really loud, another time it's really quiet, and worst of all is when people haven't got the skills or the software to even it out themselves, and you get people talking very quietly and then a really loud piece of music, and that, especially if you've got headphones or something, just deafens you, and it's terrible. So I'd like to see better sound post-production and leveling of audio levels, etc. on online video. There's your answer. I haven't got the lights and glitz of Times Square here, but we've got some nice rocks for you. This is one of my favourite YouTube channels, PhotoJoseph. He does regular live streams on photo and video tech. Let's have a listen in to what he's got to say.
Show here at youtube.com/PhotoJoseph.
So Andy, you did a show a while back where you talked about using the vMix, which is an incredible app for doing titling, and the Blackmagic ATEM, which of course I use myself. And in the video, you talk about using this little USB device, little video, I'm not even sure what it is. It's just, you've got a video storage USB on there, and somehow you're routing your video into the ATEM. You said it's a little finicky, a little odd, but it works, and I want to know more about it, because that could be very useful and a very good, affordable way for me to get pre-roll, pre-recorded video into the show. So please tell me more.
Thanks, Joseph. Great question. I guess this is what you're interested in. This is a little media player, and it's a really cheap and cheerful piece of kit. HD, costs around $20 to $30, and it has a USB slot on the front where you can plug a USB stick or an SD card slot to take media in. Infrared remote control, HDMI out the back, power, and AV out as well. So I was looking for just a cheap and cheerful way of being able to play out some media into the ATEM mixer, and I came across this. I figured it really wasn't going to be up to the task of any kind of decent playout, and really it isn't, but it does give me a number of options. What I tend to do with this, there's one particular job, or several big jobs that I do, live events, festivals, and maybe we get a whole stream of sponsor adverts as JPEG files that come in, and we put those on a USB stick. I pop it in here, set it to just play that out as a loop, and it just loops out. I take the HDMI out from here through a little micro converter to convert that to HDSDI, which I then take into the ATEM. Really the only reason we do that is to get that in on an input like number 8, which is SDI input. You could just take the HDMI out into input number 1, but we just like to keep camera 1 on input 1, camera 2 on input 2, etc., and stick the graphic stuff down the end on maybe channel 8. So that allows me to do that. It has got some quirks, as you said, and I'll just run through a few of those. The most annoying one that I find is that when you hit play, it puts a little play icon onto the feed, and there seems no way to switch that off. That means I wouldn't really be comfortable playing out a video, out a presentation, and having that logo come up on the screen. If we're preparing videos, we can put maybe a 10-second counter clock on it and then set it off and then come to it as it starts. But for immediate play out, that becomes more of a problem, so I'm not really that keen on that. With the things like the ad loop, once we set it running, it just churns through them all day, and we can cut or fade to that as and whenever we want to. The other thing that is a bit quirky with this is, with the ATEM, is the output. You can select from the menu the output type. As you well know, you have to have all the inputs the same on the ATEM, and it's really easy to knock this out using even just the one of the buttons on the remote control. And unless you've got output going to a screen where you can see the menu to actually go into the outputs and change it back to, say, 1080 50i in our case, then you kind of lose that signal. So we set this up and we leave it and it runs, but if it suddenly lost resolution, then I'd have to connect it into an external monitor, go through the menu system to change it, and then the ATEM would recognize it. So little fiddly things like that. You know, it's not a proper professional playout media service system, but it, for the price, it gets us out of trouble, and it really allows us to pump out some video graphics, etc., and just have them there on the ATEM. Really cool piece of kit. I'll leave a link below.
Hi there, Andy. Hi, Chris. I do have a question for you. Have you ever succeeded in uploading a 4 or 5 gigabyte video while abroad on holiday? I haven't, and I wonder how you do it if you've managed.
Thanks, Colin. Good question. Well, I don't upload or try and edit vlogs while I'm away travelling, so it's not usually that much of a problem for me to upload files from abroad. However, when I was in Las Vegas, I was having to send news reports back to the UK, and I was doing that typically overnight using a laptop and sending over the hotel Wi-Fi. Most of those files were only HD, so they weren't quite as massive as 4K files, and that just about worked okay. But so I can see your predicament. There are devices out there where you can buy a SIM card and it creates a local Wi-Fi hotspot that you can connect to, and some of those, I've seen people using those for when they're travelling around and having to upload vlogs every day. So whether that's something you want to look into and find local SIM cards that have good data plans, that may do what you need it to do.
Hi Andy, it's other Andy here, Andy Kirby. A couple of questions for you, mate. Number one, you were interested in getting a mini PC from me, since that's kind of what I do. What was the reason for that? What are you going to be using it for in films and stuff like that? And also, what has been the biggest challenge you've faced during your sort of YouTube, career kind of thing, that sort of stuff. So let me know, that'd be great.
Let's take a look. So Andy, to answer your question, I'm using the little mini PC, the Zotac PC, to run the ATEM control software for my video switcher. Normally I'm using a laptop and or a hardware control panel, but I'm looking at whether I can use this little box to fit inside my PPU rack and have the computer built in, ready to go. So that's what I'm trying out with the mini PC, and it seems to work. Well, there you go. Hope that answered your question, Andy. The second part of your question, what have I found the most difficult? I think the demonetization hit me quite hard because I was that close to the limit when they brought it in. But really the biggest problem I faced, and I said this on the last Q&A, getting discovered, getting found, getting people to find my content, just getting stuff watched and getting out there. Always a constant battle trying to get stuff out through social media, etc., and build up numbers, but it can be very, very difficult these days to actually get my one little video seen out of all the millions that are on there, and I think a lot of people are having that same problem right now. Anyway, I hope that answered your question and everybody else's. We've got some great stuff coming up in the not too distant future, so if you're watching this, please think about subscribing and join us again soon. Cheers.